Who's seen a pest test before? Just so I know. Oh, that's great. That's everyone was going to be in for a real shock if not. Because I was going to make a joke about Frake stealing my content, and now he's not even shown you Pest. So, but yeah, if you've seen a Pest test before, you know the deal, right? It's PHP unit without the boilerplate. You get rid of the classes, you get rid of the namespaces, and you're just left with tests, which is what we want to do. We want to test, and then we want to write features for our applications. And I think that's one of the reasons why Pest has become so popular, especially in the Laravel community, right, where we value simplicity and elegance. But I want to be clear that Pest isn't a simplicity layer on top of PHP unit. In fact, I think the feature set that Pest offers makes it possibly the best testing, in my opinion, the best testing framework, not just in PHP, but in testing in general. It's so nice to work with. So what I wanted to do today was go through a bit of a whistle-stop tour of my favorite Pest features. And the idea is to enthuse as many of you as possible to write more tests, no matter what testing framework you use. So who's up for that? Woo! OK, obviously, if I'm going to show this off, I need a demo application. So how better than to return to the greatest bird convention of all time, ParrotCon. If you have no idea what this is about, by the way, then I am so sorry for what's about to happen. But at the same time, Laracon Online was free, so get a life. Yeah, this is gorgeous. We had the designers go over this many times. And there are 3 key pages to the website: the home page, which we're looking at, the about page, and the schedule page, where you'll see we have some awesome speakers lined up to give us some great talks. So I'm really looking forward to that. Anyhow, the other thing about this site that you'll notice is on the home page, we have this sign-up form. So if you're interested in getting a ticket for Laracon, this is where you start. Obviously, the email address has to contain a reference to a parrot. So obviously, I have one set up ready. And we have to say which country we're from. Kaneko did a great job of telling you all, from the UK. Now, here's the thing. I'm not a parrot, but for the purposes of this demo, I shall pretend to be a parrot. So no confusion here, hopefully. But once we tick that, we need to confirm that we are actually a parrot by passing the parrot capture. And it's going to ask how many parrots there are. Well, thankfully, I'm the developer here, so I know how many parrots there are. There are 8 parrots in total in that picture. There is a parrot in the header at the top, and remember, I myself am pretending to be a parrot. So that's 10 parrots in total. Now, one other cool thing about this form is we can pass a referrer's email, and the cool thing about this is if you add a referrer's email, you both get a cheeky 5% discount, so why would we not do that? Laracon are huge ParrotCon fans, even though we are rivals. So if I sign up, boom, there's the session message at the top. If I jump into this debug route here, you can see we have 2 signups in the database. Isn't that nice? So that's basically what we're going to be testing for the rest of this talk. Let's jump into the IDE. And you'll see a web root. You've seen this all the time. We're using the nice new group controllers that came out in Laravel 9. And you can see I have these basic get routes here. Now, who's relatively new to testing? Is there anyone who's only kind of started testing recently, or are you all vets? Yeah, thank you for being honest. That's real good. Thank you for being honest. So one of the questions that a lot of people ask when they first start testing is, what on earth do I test, right? What on earth do I test? And that was such a big question for myself when I was getting into testing. Not a clue. But if you're testing an existing Laravel application, the biggest bang for your buck is going to be making sure that those get routes return 200 responses, right? Because in a very short space of time, you're going to have confidence that this actually works, that you're not throwing 500 errors or 404s or 40 or any other status code. I'm a teapot, whatever. You want to make sure that those routes render. And Pest makes this super simple. I want to show you the first feature by demoing that exact thing. Now, if I load my Pest test, it starts with the all too familiar test syntax. We need a nice description. So what about the home page loads? And then our test closure. Now, in here, we have full access to Laravel's test case. So we can say this, get /, and obviously we can assert that that's OK. I'll jump over into the terminal. We'll run PHP artisan test, which works flawlessly with Pest. And you'll see that gorgeous Laravel Pest output telling us that this has loaded. In 0.15 seconds, we have confirmation that our home page loads. 3 lines of code isn't bad for that, right? But what if I told you that this was the longest version of this test you could write in Pest? 3 lines of code was the longest, most verbose version. We can make this much shorter using higher order tests. So here's the basic principle. We take any methods that we call inside the test, we copy them, cut them. You remove the test closure entirely, because who needs that boilerplate, right? And then you simply chain those methods onto the end. So you end up with a one-liner. And if I run the test suite again, it passes. OK, so that's higher order tests and Pest PHP, but we're Laravel developers, right? And Nuno, who created, and you might have seen it very quickly on Frake's slide as he whizzed past, Nuno, who created Pest, is a Laravel developer. And everyone who works on the Pest maintenance team works with Laravel, so why should we have to write a test description for making a GET request? We shouldn't. So instead, you can install the Laravel plugin for Pest, and when you do so, you unlock a new superpower. I'm going to import the GET function that comes in that dependency. So I can say use function GET, and once I've done that, I get rid of all of this here, and I run this again, and boom. Now Pest generates a description for me. So if you've ever been on a deadline and you think, no, I can't write tests, I haven't got time, you've got no excuse. So now it's a very simple matter. I say about, I say schedule. Let's make sure this still renders. I love warp. Brilliant. 3 tests, 0.10 seconds. That's faster than it was before, isn't it? Intel laptops. Anyway, I'm going to comment this out so we don't fill things up, and I'm going to move on to the next feature. In this, we want to check that if your email address doesn't contain the word parrot, you will have problems. And we check that by making sure there's a validation exception. Now, I want you to ignore the fake request part for now. I'm going to explain that a little bit later. But other than that, this is a very simple test, right? But it's a little brittle. And that's because, imagine in our form request, we had the following logic. If email is equal to foo@bar.com, throw new validation exception. Well, this test is going to pass, but that's not what our intention was, is it? So how can we make this test less brittle? How can we widen its scope? Well, obviously, we could turn this one array into an array, one email into an array of emails. And then we might implement a little for each loop round about here and wrap that post request in a for each. But there is an issue with that approach, and that is that we have a single test with an assertion for every email. Now, if the email that fails is right at the end of that array, you're not going to know which email failed. It's going to be a nightmare to debug. Not even Xdebug could save you there. So instead, it'd be nicer if we had one test for every email, right? Then we would easily know which email failed. Now, we don't want to have to copy and paste this test and change the description. That's a terrible idea, so why not make use of Pest? Let's use datasets in order to solve this, and datasets are so nice to work with. We just drop a little with method in, and that with method accepts an array. And then in here, we say foo@bar.com. We can say luke@downing.tech. Don't send me any spam, please. Luke@worksome.com. We can say he's not here, so Taylor@laravel.com. And once I've done that, I can accept one of those items from the dataset in my test closure. So I can say, give me the email. That negates the need for this hard-coded email, meaning our test is even shorter and simpler. Run our test suite again, and you'll see we have 4 tests, even though we've only written a single test. And Pest is even nice enough to include the data that we've passed in the description, so we know exactly which test failed should one actually fail. So that's the very basics of data sets. They're so nice to work with to cover edge cases in your tests. But something like invalid emails is quite a common use case, and I can imagine that there are 1 or 2 or maybe 10 different tests in our test suite that want to make use of this same array of data. Now, it would be very bad to have to copy and paste that array and keep it updated across 10 different tests. So again, let's use Pest and shared datasets to solve this problem for us. Now, you can declare shared datasets pretty much anywhere in your test suite, but the proper place is in the datasets directory just here. You'll see I've created one called emails.php already. And I've declared 2 data sets. So you simply have to add a unique key, which is valid emails and invalid emails, and then the data that you're interested in. And you can even pass a function that returns a generator here in case you're working with some crazy PDF or Excel sheet or something stupid that's going to take up a lot of memory. Once I've defined these data sets, I can jump back into my test. I can remove this hard-coded array here, and I just reference that key. So I'll just say invalid emails, just like that. And when I run the test suite again, I get the exact same output, but I now have a single source of truth for all of those email addresses. If I want to add or update or change them, it's a breeze. So that is the basics of data sets in Pest. But that's just scratching the surface. Check this out. We're going to get a little crazy. So here, we want to make sure that if you say you're a parrot, but you incorrectly pass the number of parrots to the parrot capture, you'll get a session error. So here's the number of parrots you've guessed, here's whether or not you're a parrot, and here's the session error we expect to receive. And then we check that if you say you're not a parrot, but you incorrectly get the number, then there is no session error, and in fact, the response is valid. Now, if I run the test suite in this state, we have passing tests. But remember, the golden path was the number 10. That's how many parrots were in that parrot capture. So let's say we want to test a range. We always want to do that when testing. Test as many possibilities as we can. So let's say we want to test a range of numbers, 1 through 9 and 11 through 20. To do that, I'm going to have to copy and paste this array. And then I'm going to have to change this number here to 3. Oh, my goodness. This is going to take forever. 4. I'm not going to do all of these. You've got better things to do. But you can see that not only would my fingers hurt by the time I'd finished writing this array, the test file is then just this giant array. I don't see beautiful streamlined Pest tests anymore. It's not simple. It's not elegant. It's not Pest. So how do we improve this? Well, we can make use of combined data sets, and they are insane. Check this out. If I remove this number, you'll note we actually only have 2 unique values. So let's remove everything apart from those 2 unique values. And let's run our test suite again. Now, as you can imagine, it fails because Pest has no clue what it should be passing for this variable here. It doesn't know the number of parrots. But we can inform Pest about that by adding a second data set. So here, I'm going to say with, and let's make use of PHP's range function to very quickly generate an array of numbers, right? 1 through 9. Now, when I execute my test suite again, you're going to see I don't just have 2 tests, I have 18 tests. Where on earth did they come from? Let's just expand the details here. And you'll see that Pest is actually automatically creating a Cartesian product of all of the data sets you've passed to the test. So every possible iteration of those data sets is being put together to give you the data you want to test every edge case you can imagine in your test suite. So, for example, let's now boost the number of tests greatly by very slowly putting that over there. And let's wrap this in an array and spread the range out. And then we wanted to test numbers 11 through 20 as well, right? So let's say range 11 through 20. Run the test suite again, and 38 tests. So you can imagine, and you can combine more than two with statements, by the way. You can add as many with methods as you like. You can imagine that you can very quickly build out every possible edge case in your application when writing tests using combined data sets. So that's combined data sets with Pest PHP. Super cool feature. All right, on to my favorite feature, maybe because I contributed to it. Expectations. So check out the following test. We want to check that referrer input, right? We want to check that if you add a valid referrer email, both you and the referrer get a 5% discount. And we're performing several checks at the end of this test, or we'd like to perform several checks at the end of this test to make sure that's the case. So for example, ensuring that the sign-up has been given a 5% discount, ensuring that the sign-up has a referrer relation, and that referrer relation is equal to the referrer on line 40 there, and ensuring that the referrer is also being given a 5% discount. Now, if you've come from PHP Unit, which I assume most of you have used PHP Unit given that we only have one person new to testing, then you probably used to assertions. How would we write this with an assertion? We'd say this. I'm going to use same because I love strict equality checks. And in PHP Unit, we have to pass the expected value as the first parameter. So in this case, it's a 5% discount. And then we can use that sign-up object I've created to grab the discount property. Now, by the way, if I run this, I get a passing test. So if you want to use assertions with Pest, you're free to do so. I'm not going to stop you. But let's take a look at the same assertion written using Pest's expectation API. Expectations always start the same way, using the expect function. And you always pass the same single parameter to expect, which is the value you want to make checks on. So in this case, we want to make checks on the sign-up discount property, right? And once you've done that, you are given a whole load of different methods that you can call. And these methods are basically going to be the checks on your object. So in this case, we want to check that the value is 5. Well, we can use the to-be statement here. And I can say, make sure that the value is actually 5. And if I run my tests again, you'll see that it still passes. So those are equal, basically. Those two lines, 52 and 53, are basically equivalent. But I prefer the expectation API for its declarative nature and how expressive it is. Also, add to that the fact that we can chain additional checks onto the same expectation. So I can say to be int, for example. Or I could say to be float, if it was a float, but it's not. So I won't put that. So let's go ahead and use the expectation API to add these other checks as well. So I can say, expect that the signups referrer, and then we can use the is method, which comes with Eloquent, right, to check that models are the same. So I can check that that's the same as that referrer variable from up top, and that's a Boolean value, so let's say to be true. And then I can say, expect that the signup referrer discount property is also 5, right? Put my semicolons in the right place, run the test suite again, it passes. So they are our 3 checks for this test. They're the 3 checks we want to make. And expectations don't have to get any more complex than that. You can stick there. It's easy to work with. It's nice. It's very declarative and elegant and simple, which is what Pest is aiming to be. But when you're testing with Laravel, you're often testing Eloquent models, and Eloquent models always have properties and relations have properties that you want to check, and you go down this nested chain, and your test ends up with like 40 assertions. You ever been in that situation, right? You're like 40 assertions, all checking the same Eloquent model and different properties on it. Well, we really wanted to fix that with Pest and make that much cleaner. Enter higher order expectations. So note that all 3 of these expect calls start with the same object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this in higher order. I'll start with expect again, but I'm not going to access anything inside expect. In fact, I'm going to actually access the discount property outside of the sign-up on the expectation API itself. And then I'm going to say, make sure that it's a value of 5. Now, when I run this, it's actually going to pass. Okay, so the expectation API is diving into that sign-up object, pulling out the discount, wrapping it in an expectation, and then allowing us to perform methods on it. But once you've performed one or more expectation methods, you can actually reset the scope and start again. So now I can say, give me the referrer relationship on that sign-up. Not only that, but I can jump into the referrer relationship and say, call the is method on that referrer and make sure that that value is true, right? Let's run the tests again. Everything still passes. And obviously, the scope is now going to reset itself again, which means we can say, give me the referrer relationship again, give me the discount property, and expect that to be 5. And now we can remove all of these duplicates up here. And we actually only call signup once now, so we can either remove this variable here and inline it. Oh, excuse me. Let's try that again. And what we're left with is this gorgeous declarative chain that is super easy to update, add to, change as the requirements of your test change. So you don't even have to come out and add more expect calls. It's super easy to update. And if you're using a PHP Storm as well in the Pest plugin, you even get full auto-completion for all of the properties and methods and properties on your properties and methods in your Pest test suite. So that's really nice. Now, before I finish, I want to just talk about this fake request method. This is part of a package I'm actually working on at the moment that allows you to fake form request data. So if you work with eloquent models, you'll know about class-based model factories, right? And you can create fake models to use in your tests. But when we're testing form data, we still have to manually fill out all that array, don't we? Which is super annoying. So I'm working on something currently that will basically allow you to fake all of that data and allow you to concentrate on just the fields that you're actually testing with. It's not quite ready for prime time, which is why I've not gone into it any further. But just so you know what that's about, and if you follow me on Twitter, little plug there, then I'll keep you updated when that's ready. Before I finish, I thought it would be nice to combine everything we've looked at into one mega pest test. So here, we are checking that a user can actually sign up, and we make a simple post request, a redirect a cert session has. First things first, can this become higher order? Well, of course it can. Otherwise, I wouldn't have put it in the demo, would I? So we'll take that, we'll remove the closure, and then I'll chain those methods instead onto the end of the test. Let's run our test suite. In fact, I'm just going to comment this one out so it's not getting in the way. Run our test suite, and boom, it's passing. Okay, what about data sets? Well, note that we're only testing on a single email address here, but you saw earlier I've already created a shared data set for valid emails, so wouldn't it be nice if we looped over those valid emails and made sure that multiple users can sign up? Well, we can do that using that same with method, so let's say with, and we'll ask for valid emails. And then instead of passing this array directly, I'm going to pass a closure that receives that email item. What? And then I'm going to replace this with that dynamic email. Let's run the test again. Hopefully, 4 tests are now being generated, and you can see that we're dynamically passing that email in a higher order test. So higher order tests and data sets work together beautifully. What about expectations? Well, it would be nice to double check that a sign-up model has actually been created and that its country is equal to GB. So I'll chain a call to expect onto the end here, and we'll say, again, give me that email, and I'll say sign up first where the email property is equal to email, and I could access like exists or country in here, but higher order expectations work in higher order tests. So you can actually say, well, let's make sure just for clarity's sake that to be true is correct on the exist property, and let's also grab the country property and make sure that that's equal to GB. And if you run that again, we have a passing test. So that is higher order tests, data sets, shared data sets, expectations, higher order expectations, all coming together into a single, very pesty test. All right, I've had 25 minutes. Actually, to be accurate, I've had 23 minutes to talk about Pest PHP. It is nowhere near enough time to cover what the framework can do. It is huge and has so many different features. So if you would like to learn more, I recommend the following courses. Testing Laravel by Sparsy is outstanding. I've watched it myself. I highly recommend it. It is well worth your time and energy. They also have a flavor for PHP units, so if you prefer that, you can check that out as well. If you want something for free, which who doesn't, Code Course has up and running with Pest. Over 4 hours of content for free is nothing to complain about. Again, highly recommend you go check that out. And if you want something more laid back and a little bit more experimental, you can check out Pest in Practice on YouTube. We take real open source projects, we write pest tests for them, and we try some crazy stuff like I did in that last test. So come join me there if you want. If that weren't enough, Sparsy has been kind enough to offer 30% off of their Testing Laravel course with the coupon code ParrotCon. So if you would like some money off their course, keep that in mind. And also, if you forget the word ParrotCon, how could you? But if you do, come up to me after the conference and I'll remind you. With that out of the way, though, I want to say thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed my little pest experiments there. You can find me on Twitter at LukeDowning19. My personal blog is downing.tech. And make sure you come and say hi after the conference. I'd love to meet as many of you as possible. But thank you. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
You're waiting for me. So, I got no question.
Oh, very good.
You're too explicit with your code.
This is it. Well, that's really good, because I was really
Yeah,
afraid of
Pest is rock bottom. It's flying, man. But I got a question. What's the future for Pest? Are you intending?
You know, Mike,
Now
come
it's
from
a
Coach
tricky
Eller and kill
question.
me.
I should know it. But this is a tricky question. Is Pest coming in? I'm looking at you also. It's coming into Laravel.
That didn't go very well last time, did it? I don't know, but you may have noticed or not have noticed that there are a lot of tags you can use now with many of the Laravel starter kits that actually just get Pest up and running for you. So, for example, Jetstream, you can ask it to install Pest tests rather than PHP unit tests, and it will do that for you when you publish them. And even when you are using, say, PHP to make test, you can pass a Pest flag and it will make a Pest test instead of PHP unit test. So it's slowly kind of putting itself alongside PHP unit in the Laravel framework, which is nice for anyone reaching out for Pest.
Let's see if it fits on Laravel real soon. Quick poll, maybe here, as far as you've seen from the talk, and how much content there is, how much of you would like to see Pest as being the default one on Laravel? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, can I have a pic?
You want to come here? No one to go. No. Just got it. There is just. No. Moving on. Thanks again for Luke Downing.